Up+Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up+Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up+Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Happy Monday. Thank you so much for being Up+Adam. Hope you had a great weekend. Gorgeous outside. It's kind of a fun show today. If you've ever dropped a quarter into, say, Street Fighter, the arcade, maybe tried to crane kick a bully after watching The Karate Kid, or even found yourself shouting, "Show enough!" at the TV during The Last Dragon, you are not alone. The Kung Fu craze that swept America in the 70s and 80s didn't just change what we watched, it changed who we saw as heroes. And it all started with a single film exploding onto the screens in 1973. That spark became a fire, one that shaped cinema, hip-hop, video games, even after-school programs in the suburbs. But the real story behind those fists, it's deeper, more raw, more revolutionary, and wildly more fun than you have maybe ever thought. Authors Grady Hendrix and Chris Poggiali join us today to talk about their book, These Fists Break Bricks. And it is not your average film history. This is the untold story of how martial arts movies, born from anti-colonial struggle in Hong Kong, stormed American theaters, rewired pop culture here, and gave Black, Latino, Asian kids something more powerful than a punchline. We're talking blood-soaked Saturday matinees, secret CIA-funded karate films, and the rise of Bruceploitation, as it was later referred to. Even bootleg VHS empires run by 11-year-olds. This interview is part mixtape, part manifesto. It is all heart. And even if you are not into kung fu or martial arts, look, I get it. I promise this is a fun chat that will surprise you, definitely teach you something, and maybe even make you wish you still had those nunchucks from the 4th grade. So looking forward to this conversation. Definitely. All right, quick though. Sports, I mean, there's so much in the news. I thought, again, I've been just like thirsting for stories that make you feel good or that just have some good in them. What a scene in Vegas on Saturday night. Terrence Crawford, now the undisputed super middleweight champ, put on an absolute masterclass against Canelo Alvarez. Now, Canelo is just, I mean, legendary, incredible fighter. A lot of trash talk before, even a shove. But when the gloves came off, it was nothing but respect between two legends. Crawford made history. First guy to ever become an undisputed champ in 3 weight classes during the 4-belt era. He took Canelo's WBC, WBA, WBO, and IBF titles. But instead of gloating, Crawford turned around and did something rather beautiful. He walked into Canelo's press conference, gave the dude a hug, high-fived his daughter Maria, and then handed him his belts back. That's the hardware that Canelo held for like 5 years. Now, don't get it twisted. Crawford's still the champ, but he'll have new belts made, I'm sure. But the gesture, that is everything good about sports, about people, about respect in one moment. One gesture. 2 all-time greats, and a reminder, it ain't always about the money or the hype. Sometimes it's just about a love of the game, and it's about respect. And that really showed it. And in a weird time of a weird week with a lot of headlines, to find headlines that have good in them, I'm all about it. All about it. Now, before we get into our chat with Grady, with Chris, let me tell you about our friends at Life Elements. You know I love a good local story, and this one's got heart. This one's got hustle, and best of all, this one's got healing. Life Elements, based right there in Atascadero. Woman, minority-owned company making small batch bath, body, wellness products that are straight up alchemy. Their EcoSmart deodorants, absolute game changers. Their CBD relief sticks, legendary. Yes, of course, hit them up, lifeelements.com. And when you do, show yourself some love by using the promo code ADAM at checkout. Save 15% on everything in your cart. But I encourage you to go check them out. They're the nicest people, the sweetest folks. 7425 El Camino Real. Just smell the place when you walk in. You're like, oh, this is good. Sweet back right corner of the plaza. You can't miss it. Definitely meet them. If you're in Arroyo Grande, their stuff's at the Hive. If you're in Paso, their stuff is at the General Store, downtown Paso. But again, I encourage you to get in there. I encourage you to hit up lifeelements.com. When you do, use that promo code ADAM. We love Life Elements.
It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, my guests today, two guys who didn't just write a book about Kung Fu movies, they wrote the book. Grady Hendrix is a New York Times bestselling author and co-founder of the New York Asian Film Festival, and Chris Poggiali is a film historian, longtime editor of the cult favorite Temple of Schlock. Together, they've unleashed a bone-breaking, mind-blowing deep dive called These Fists Break Bricks, a wildly illustrated, wildly true account of how martial arts films exploded into America, literally transformed pop culture, and gave a whole generation of kids, especially me, but especially Black, Asian, Latino, something powerful to believe in. It was because of these movies I literally joined karate when I was 7 till and I taught the Young Olympians at like 18, 19. Like it became a huge part of my life. And martial arts has ingrained so much in my mind and in every single thing I do. It's incredible. And this conversation isn't just about movies. It's about rebellion, identity, mixtapes, hip hop, weirdly enough, video stores, and why Bruce Lee is still in the fight today. Let's welcome to the show, Grady, Chris. Thanks, guys, so much for being Up and Adam. How you guys doing?
Okay.
I'm good. And dude, you have got a velvet voice for radio.
Thank you so much. Appreciate meeting both of you guys.
Nice meeting you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah,
So where are you out of? San Luis Obispo? Or?
Yeah, we're right in the middle between LA and San Francisco. And,
nice.
We're, wine country. We got beaches like Pismo Beach, Paso wine country, San Luis Obispo. Yeah. Hey, where are you guys from?
New York. Well, I'm from South Carolina, but I've been in New York since 92.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I'm in New Rochelle, which is just north of Manhattan.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Nice. Well, look, I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys. Thanks, both of you gentlemen, for being Up and Adam. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Oh, man, a chance to talk Kung Fu. We're in.
I know. This is going to be fun. I did martial arts like my whole life growing up. Not Kung Fu, but of course I worshipped it because of, the obvious, which we'll talk about. But yeah, no, so exciting and really unique. There's something wild about the book because it reads like a mixtape of revolution, race, rebellion, reels of 35 millimeter film. But underneath the humor and pop, it's clear. And that this was personal for a lot of people. Do you remember the first time a Kung Fu movie hit you? Not just as really a film, but as a moment where you realize, oh, this is not just cinema. This is dope. This is something bigger.
Yeah, Chris, you go first because I know what I'm going to say.
It wasn't the first one I saw, but on a Saturday afternoon in the early mid 80s, I watched The Killer from Shantung. That was the U.S. title of a boxer from Shantung, Shaw Brothers movie. And it was on commercial television on Saturday afternoon. It was, 3:00 on a Saturday. And it was the bloodiest thing. I think it still is the bloodiest thing I've ever seen on commercial television. Even with the trimming here and there, right. It's still, 50 guys with axes against Chen Quan Tai. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And what a trip. It rocked my world.
Yeah. I'm from South Carolina, and I met my wife at NYU in the early 90s. And we were separated one summer. I was down in South Carolina, and she was in Toronto, where she's from, which has a huge Chinatown and an old, Chinatown movie theater that showed first-run Hong Kong movies. And Jackie Chan's Super Cop had just come out, and she sent me a bootleg VHS tape of it. It was like dubbed into Vietnamese with some terrible English subtitles on the bottom. And I watched that thing all summer. And I remember seeing Jackie Chan, and as corny as it sounds, I mean, the movie's great. Michelle Yeoh's great in it. And I was like, wow, women are like kicking ass in these movies. Like it's just a normal day at the beach.
Right.
But I was like, there was something about Jackie Chan where I was like, he makes physics not apply to, he beats physics. He beats everything through sheer willpower. And that just stuck with me that like, you know, he went up against everything. He's the underdog and he just doesn't quit. And it blew me away.
There's something about that. I love how you say that because it reminds me of like Michael Jordan. You're like, this doesn't add up. Like the way this human is moving in and of themselves and in this world, it doesn't make sense. That's so cool. We'll talk about Bruce Lee for a second because his death was a shockwave, but what followed was like this strange, almost chaotic era of imitation, confusion, Bruce-sploitation, right? What did that moment tell us about how America consumes non-white heroes? Was it grief or greed that kept Bruce alive on screen long after he was gone?
Well, actually, so one thing that's really interesting. So when Bruce Lee died, like you said, I mean, the imitators were everywhere, right? And there was a hunger, I think, that was genuine on the part of an audience. They wanted more of what they loved. And I think with exhibitors and producers and distributors, it was greed, 100% greed. And they were like, what can we get? We can get a Bruce Lee. We can get a Bruce Lee. We can get someone who looks like Bruce Lung, Bruce Lowe, Judy Lee. We'll bill her as his sister. And there was something really fascinating, though. A guy named Seraphim Karalexis, who was a producer and a distributor. He was a really smart guy. And he's like, the next Bruce, he looked to the audience like the next Bruce Lee needs to be black. I need a black actor who can do this because these audiences, a lot of them are black or they're Latino or they're Asian. They don't want to see a knockoff. They want to see themselves.
Yeah.
And he went and found Ron Van Cleef, who he held open auditions. All these casting directors were like, you want a black martial arts guy? You're nuts. And he had these auditions and Ron Van Cleef walked in his door, 6 foot plus, built like a brick shithouse. He was a bouncer at the Electric Circus nightclub, and he had seen a bunch of kung fu movies and studied martial arts. And he was the real deal. And Ron was charismatic and cool and cocky and good on screen. He was everything Bruce Lee was, and he was black. And those Black Dragon movies they made together, they did so well. They were made for pennies and made millions. You know,
Chris, it's so interesting because I was just about to ask that. You know, you write about black teenagers learning kung fu, starring in films, and then rushing back in time for school, right? There's something deeply beautiful about that, a kind of agency, a power, even poetry. And I'm curious, in what ways, Chris, do you think martial arts became a new language for expression, especially for communities that didn't often see themselves as the hero?
Well, first and foremost, it was seeing actors and actresses who looked like them. And you didn't have, as we put it in the book, the baggage that blaxploitation movies came with, being American-made films and, this is the black hero, this is the whitey villain, and so on. These were about a struggle wherever the film was set. If it was China and Japan was occupying, the Japanese were the villains for they were the villains for that for that story. So it's more often than not, it was the story about the underdog rising up and overtaking the suppressors. And that's something that I think everybody can relate to.
There's a rawness to those grindhouse theaters on 42nd Street, a grit, a danger, but also like a magic. What did those seedy little theaters give to kung fu films that mainstream cinemas couldn't? Were they just a venue, or were they actually part of the art?
They were located in neighborhoods where kids could get to them and non-white audiences could get to it and working class audiences could get to them. These weren't people who were going to pile in a car and drive to the suburbs to see something at a shiny, newer, better theater. They were going to see something down the block where they could go to and spend their allowance or whatever they'd earned, running errands or washing cars or whatever it was. they were going to spend it there. So proximity was a big part of it. And the other part of it was there was a really tight feedback loop. I mean, these were theaters that operated on a financial margin. So the theater owners were like, oh, this movie's making more money. I don't care if it's a trashy kung fu movie. I'm keeping it in. It's playing. I want more like this. And if their distributor wouldn't give it to them, they'd find another distributor who would. These were theaters that operated on the margins. And because of that, they had their ears to the ground and were ahead of the trends again and again.
And a lot of them would program maybe on a Saturday night. The 9 o'clock show would be a Spanish language movie. It would maybe be a Mexican movie that they brought in because there was a large Spanish population in that city. Like the Colonial Theater in Hartford, Connecticut was one theater that would do that. It would try different things based on what the community was asking for. Other theaters, I know some mall theaters, like in the 80s, would run Chinese movies, martial arts movies as midnight shows, or maybe on a Friday night, like at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, you guys trace the influence of Kung Fu all the way through The Matrix, Kill Bill, Black Panther, but influence isn't always credit. Aside from, of course, like the Quentin Tarantinos, do you think modern Hollywood gives enough credit to the roots that these movies grew from, or have we kind of dressed up something ancient and kind of called it something new?
I think they're starting to. When you see a movie like John Wick 4 that has Hiroyuki Sanada billed as Henry Sanada in it in an acting role, or you see Henry Sanada winning an Emmy for Shogun, here's a guy who started out in this boom as an action guy, and you're seeing him get his due as an actor. You're seeing Donnie Yen in John Wick 4 being Johnny Yen, getting to do his own choreography. So I think it's starting to happen, but I think Chris would agree. It was a long time coming.
Sure. Yeah. And, I see the influence of that early 70s period everywhere. I mean, there was like a 6-month period where we had the Mission Impossible movie, not the new one, but the previous one, part 1, and The Beekeeper. And both of those movies owe a lot in their plots to the Destroyer novels from the early 70s, the Remo Williams, and just these movies in general, the John Wicks, the Nobodies, all of these movies that are coming out, these action films. The heroes and heroines all have some martial arts experience. Yeah. And so it all goes back to that period.
Now, putting aside,
and I will. Oh, sorry.
No, please.
I was just
going
to say.
no,
I didn't mean. I was just going to say, and another person you got who's always giving credit, RZA of Wu-Tang Clan. He's been shouting out to these actors in these movies since the day he began rapping.
So true. Wu-Tang Clan is always given props. Like Quentin Tarantino, I feel too. Now, I want to put aside, speaking of Quentin, the cinematography for a second, because of course the zooms, the cuts, all this stuff is super unique. But let's talk about the soundtrack of Pain, the sound of these films, those walls, those exaggerated whooshes, the drum hits. I mean, they're visceral in Kung Fu movies. They really hit. What role did sound design play in turning these movies into experiences? Was it part of what made people feel the power just watching something?
Yeah, I feel like it's very intertwined with comic books.
Sure.
The way you would see the whoosh in a starburst in a comic book. And it just that exaggerated comic book feel. And, martial arts movies were very popular with comic book writers and artists in the early 70s because these were the superhero movies of the day. There weren't any superhero movies this big for them. And, they worked all of that into the comic books, just like I feel like, manga in Japan and it's definitely a comic book feel.
Yeah. I remember being a kid. I did karate starting when I was 7, got my black belt and did tournaments all through childhood into adulthood, really. And trying to earn we were doing, I was under Chuck Norris's Fighting Arts Federation. And it was like years after Enter the Dragon, but it was that movie still like owned what we were trying to replicate. But then later on, you talk about Karate Kid, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ernie Reyes Jr., Sidekicks with Jonathan Brandis and Chuck Norris. What do you think sparked that shift from street fights in Shaolin to suburban living rooms, after school classes. How did martial arts become a coming of age tool for kids?
I think a big part of it was accessibility. Like, these kids knew something cool was going on at theaters. Kids always know that, and they wanted to go see it. And their parents were like, no, that's too dangerous to go into Times Square or the Combat Zone or the Loop or wherever. And so people like Mel Moran started bringing these movies to TV, to Black Belt Theater, to all these things, these TV packages that were airing on Saturday morning. And kids were seeing this stuff, and it looked amazing. I mean, if you're a kid and you're watching the Five Deadly Venoms in those masks and doing all their stunts and doing all this incredible kung fu, you want to do that too. And I think for a lot of those kids, I mean, if you were like me, you went and took some Taekwondo for a year or two and it was cool, but then you went on and played soccer or something. But I think some kids really, it resonated with them and they got more into it and they started studying the culture and where it's coming from and all that. But yeah, seeing it on TV was, I think, the first step for a lot of these kids. But
also, like, when you unmask the kid, here's like Ernie Reyes Jr. He literally was my age. I'm going to tournaments in LA every Saturday, and like I caught him at one. Like, I mean, like, it's just amazing. Like, oh my God, that's Ernie Reyes Jr. He's my age. He's doing backflips and flying sidekicks. And it was just so, like, I guess like what you said, accessible. So true. I want to go from that talk to the digital dojo. After the boom of kung fu movies and the after school craze, martial arts didn't fade. They migrated onto cartridges, into arcades. NES had Kung Fu, Karate Champ. Sure, then we get Street Fighter, evolves to Mortal Kombat. Suddenly fists are flying in outer space, under waterfalls. It's crazy. What do you think it says about us that martial arts didn't just survive, but thrived through video games? And what do you think those games keep alive that movies, even studios like karate studios, couldn't?
Well, it's just an extension, I think, of when the video games first came around. I mean, when you had Don Bluth, who had done Secret of Nim, and then he started designing video games like Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. There was this connection making video games a little more cinematic, and I feel like now we've gone full circle, and it's the movies a lot of times look like video games. I feel like I'm sitting there, I'm looking over my friend's shoulder, watching him or her play a video game for 2 hours. So the video games really, like something like Street Fighter, has a direct connection to martial arts movies. Having Joe Louis, one of the characters is based on Joe Louis, and so yeah, it's really a way for people who loved martial arts movies, would watch them on TV or in theaters, to actually get to be a martial artist, and without studying for X number of years to get a belt. You can drop a quarter in or 50 cents and play a game for however long.
Carl Douglas's Kung Fu Fighting, right? Everybody was Kung Fu Fighting, right? Oh, that song was iconic, but it walks this tricky line. I mean, it's disco. It's catchy, but is it celebration or was it caricature? Did that track help bring visibility to the scene, or did it almost hurt the movement, turning it into a meme, or by kind of turning martial arts into a punchline for the mainstream?
Chris, Carl Douglas is your guy, so I think.
Well, I don't think they gave too mumuch thought to it, because it was recorded in like 10 minutes. They had 10 minutes left of studio time, and they just recorded it, and it was good. They needed a B-side for whatever the A side was. No one remembers the A side. And it just took the world by storm, and I think it just surprised a lot of people when it came out. But I don't know if it really helped or hurt. I mean, when the song came out, it was 1974, and already the genre was kind of on the downturn. I think it was more. It was a catchy song, and it was an R&B hit, and you could dance to it on Soul Train,
right?
And and there were kung fu movies playing in the urban theaters still for for the next 10 or 15 years. So the fact that broke out at that time, I don't think it either helped or hurt the genre, but I think it was Flo and Eddie from the Turtles. They did a live version of it, and which is really, I found that more insulting than, and really kind of offensive if you
Right.
listen to their version of kung fu fighting. It was a live version of it. But the song itself, I like it.
Yeah.
As many times as I hear it,
It's a
I
classic.
like it.
No,
It's
for
catchy.
sure.
Yeah.
I did a lip sync to it when I was in high school. Let me ask you, Grady, The Last Dragon was wild in the best way, though. I mean, I have such great memories of that movie. Glow Fist showdowns, Motown Records producing, and Bruce Leroy walking the line between satire and soul. Really, for a lot of people, that was their first black superhero movie long before Black Panther. How do you see the cultural significance of The Last Dragon, not just as a cult film, but as a moment where martial arts, music, and black identity collide on screen?
Yeah. So what's really interesting about The Last Dragon, is it's produced by Barry Gordy. I mean, it was his brainchild, the head of Motown Records. And he really wanted to make a movie for the community. I mean, and one of the things he did was it's the Karate Kid story, but with a black kid.
Yeah.
It is about the young kid played by Timac, who was, I think, a teenager at the time, or just barely not a teenager, out of teenagehood. And he really searched for this kid to do it, to tell this story about this kid. And then he put in all these other tropes, right? The master who's Chinese, who teaches him Kung Fu. He's got scenes shot in Times Square at some of the theaters that showed this stuff. It's in New York City, which was the East Coast heartbeat of this scene. I mean, it really was a love letter to these movies. And, and two things kind of came out of it. One is, I do think this was a road not taken, right? This idea of here's a big, lush, lavish, big budget, good looking black martial arts movie that's really with it, that has this soundtrack that works for kids. It was indistinguishable from a big budget Hollywood movie. And it became the road not taken because there was some falling out among the people who made it. I mean, Timac was, he wanted more money to do a sequel and he wanted more all that, in which I understand, but Barry Gordy was kind of like, I'm not working with a star who doesn't want to just do what I tell them. And then the other thing that really made it the road not taken is a guy was beaten to death in a movie theater by a crazy person in New York City during a screening of The Last Dragon. And it became big headlines. The movie violence. And then there was basically a bunch of kids on Easter weekend in Philly. And there were a bunch of kids coming out of a screenings of The Last Dragon and of the new Friday the 13th movie. And there were a bunch of kids trying to get in. It turned into a scuffle. It turned into a big kind of riot on the streets. Cops over-responded. And it was billed as the riot that was spawned by the violence inspired by The Last Dragon.
Man.
And Philly, the mayor and the police commissioner gave these press conferences on TV and to the newspaper saying, if you're going to screen a martial arts movie in Philly, you need to pay for extra security and off-duty police officers in your theaters. And it kind of put a chill on it. Suddenly, people were associating movies directed at a black audience with black stars and martial arts with violence. And you can see after this was when people with movies like Colors and New Jack City and Boys in the Hood was where suddenly there'd be these floods of police officers in theaters because it was viewed as, it's a black movie. Kids are going to imitate the violence on screen. But it started with The Last Dragon. And I will always, there's no way to scientifically prove it. But I think that sort of association of that movie with violence, which was unfair, closed off a road of what could have been.
Fascinating. Before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you both, maybe what's the most underrated kung fu flick that no one ever talks about, but maybe you really ride hard for it? And then also you can kind of blend it with this. We've all kind of rented maybe a martial arts movie back in the old VHS days or something, or maybe you traded some old like bootleg VHS. Was there anything that maybe you kind of traded around that kind of stood out, or what's that one that really just like, oh damn, that one?
I've always loved Master of the Flying Guillotine. I mean, I mean, it has a great rep, so maybe that's a poor choice for an underrepresented film, or a largely unknown one. But at the risk of maybe picking the one that Grady's going to say, I'm a big fan of Death Promise. I don't know if Grady was going to mention that one, but I really like Death Promise. That's an American-made movie, and it's really kind of the story of its star, Charles Bonnet, and it was originally called The Landlord, and it's about these landlords that are trying to chase people out of this apartment building, and it becomes a revenge story. It has the Yakuza. It has like ninja methods of killing people. It has everything, and it was shot all around Harlem.
Sweet.
So it's a lot of fun.
I love that. Nice. Grady, what do you think?
And Charles, I will say, gave us a lot of time. He's passed away since then, but he was a big source for this book. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Death Promise is amazing, but I'm going to say the one that I think doesn't get enough play is Soul Brothers of Kung Fu, starring the Bruce Lee imitator Bruce Lee, L.I., and Carl Scott, who at the time was this 15-year-old black kid who'd studied Kung Fu and martial arts under Steve Muhammad, who was one of the founders of the Black Karate Federation, who you can see at the beginning of Enter the Dragon when Jim Kelly's training. That's the Black Karate Foundation or Federation's headquarters. And he's talking to Steve Muhammad, who is a legendary competitive fighter. I mean, he's an amazing individual. But Carl Scott was his student. He was 15 years old. His mom was like, okay, you're going to go make a movie in Hong Kong. When he got sort of tapped by these producers, she's like, have him back in time to start 10th grade. And it's a cheap movie. You can catch a dubbed version of it in full on YouTube or really in streaming, I think, almost anywhere.
Yeah.
But the fights in it it's a fun movie. The fights are great. And Carl Scott was a lot of these guys came out of a karate tradition, which was a little bit stiffer, a little bit more about stance and forms, but Kung Fu was about style. It was about grace. It was about flow. And he is a limber, agile guy. And he's got, even at 15, he is burning the screen up with his presence.
Wow.
I mean, he is so much fun. He's throwing rocks at his opponents. He is having a blast. And so the cheapness of the movie aside, you can see the joy these guys had and the skills and the chops they had coming through that low budget. So you could have a much worse time at the movies than getting a six-pack and Soul Brothers of Kung Fu.
Nice. Really quick, because I'm dying to know, is there an old school Kung Fu movie that's screaming for a modern remake that you could see it happening? I don't know.
Maybe Eight Diagram Pole Fighter.
Sweet.
See, yeah, I would say that the lives of these guys is what's screaming for the remake, for the big screen treatment. I mean, someone like Ron Van Cleef, who was lynched unsuccessfully when he was a soldier down south, and then became this karate fighter and became this huge star later in his life. Or Carl Scott, or Charles Bonnet, who started with nothing and wound up losing his dojo and being homeless for years until his students rescued him off the streets. Or even Owen Watson, who was a Vietnam vet who came back to New York and was homeless alcoholic. He was so traumatized, who saved his own life through martial arts and then started a school where he started helping veterans like himself. I mean, these guys are amazing. I want to see them on the big screen.
Chris, Grady, how much fun was this? I just enjoyed the two of you good gentlemen. We got, next time I'm in New York, I'm going to come by and we're all going to have a drink and talk some Kung Fu movies, brothers.
Let's do it.
It's on. Thank you so much. I looked all over the internet to research this. I would love if you could send a copy of the book. I was just geeking out over it. Normally they send me a PDF, and I don't know that they had one for this one. So my personal email is 805montiel@gmail. I mean, you can also get it from the people.
You put it in the chat?
Yeah. I'll do it real quick. Let me see.
Put it in the chat and we'll get one out to you tomorrow.
Even if it's a PDF, it'd be so dope.
No. We got hard copies. And
oh, you guys are the best. And I would love to have you on again. So now that you have my email, maybe we can open up correspondence a little bit.
Absolutely.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
I love it. Well, whether you're a lifelong Kung Fu fan or you just remember renting Bloodsport on VHS, this chat It was a full-on flying sidekick to the soul. This was fun. To learn more, grab the book wherever you get yours, bookstores, online, or check out thesefistbreakbricks.com. We got the links in the show notes. All right, it's Monday. Tomorrow, True Crime Tuesday. Over the weekend, the 6-year anniversary of the loss of Tommy Jodry. Fell off the downtown parking structure on Marsh Street. A real intense interview with his parents, William and Bill, as well as clinical psychologist Dr. Leslie Dobson, who came into town for the vigil that happened yesterday. So we're going to have a conversation with them for True Crime Tuesday. It's a really good conversation, and I loved involving Dr. Leslie Dobson in there because she's just got a fire about her that I really feel both Bill and Mary Jane Jodry, Tommy's parents, needed to feel. I just think it was a great meeting. It's going to be a great conversation. Some of it will be for Dr. Leslie Dobson's podcast, but we recorded the whole thing, so we're going to be using some of it for ours tomorrow, especially with the timeliness of it, that 6-year anniversary happening yesterday. So we'll do that for True Crime Tuesday tomorrow. Until then, thanks to Moonshiner Collective for original music on the show called Start Again. Thanks to you for rating, reviewing, subscribing to the show wherever you listen to it, sharing it with a friend. That really helps others discover the community here. And to our friends at Tamber Winery, giving us the Lobro Studios at Tamber. We love Josh and Shiasa. Taste their wines in the village of Arroyo Grande. Learn more, Tamber, T-I-M-B-R-E, tamberwinery.com. Just opened up that 2022 Leading Vocals Pinot Noir. Ooh, man, that is a sexy wine. Tamberwinery.com. All right, till tomorrow, I am Adam Montiel. I hope you have a great beginning to your week, a great day ahead of you, and thank you for being Up and Adam.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again. Let's start